Mr. Leader, is Graham Platner a liability for Democrats after those lewd Reddit posts were exposed?
I haven't seen those posts, thanks.
Senator, is Graham Platner a liability right now for Democrats after those Reddit posts, the lewd posts that just were revealed? Senator, do you rescind your endorsement of Graham Platner after those lewd posts on Reddit?
Yeah. First off, just what I think.
Are you reconsidering endorsing Platner after those lewd Reddit posts that came out?
Senator, what about Talarico, sir? What about the president endorsing Paxton over Cornyn? Do you think that changes the dynamic in Texas?
The Republicans in Texas are in a shambles.
Meanwhile,
are there other skeletons from your past that still may emerge in this race?
No. My life is not very complicated, and there is not anything else coming. That's why they led with what they had.
That was just a couple of months ago. As it turns out, there was something else coming. My panel joins me now to discuss. Thank you all for being here. Just to recap, the Wall Street Journal and New York Times published reports that claim Platner's wife, Amy Gertner, told Platner's campaign last August about sexual text messages she found between her husband and women earlier in their marriage. And I should also say that, according to the Platner campaign, they told her that, this is the New York Times, that her husband had been exchanging sexual messages with as many as a dozen women. And they say at the campaign, no, he was communicating with up to 6. Congresswoman, as a politician here, as a Democrat, what do you think this is going to mean going forward?
When a politician get caught in a lie, you find out real fast what their party is made of. Do they own it, or do they pretend they never heard about it? And that's the question sitting at the center of everything. We're about to break it down today because Graham Platner situation in Maine is not just a story about one candidate making bad decisions. It's a story about how the people around them responded when the walls started closing in, and what the response tells you about whether any of them actually mean what they say. Platner is the Democratic Senate candidate running against Susan Collins in Maine. And in the span of just a few weeks, scandal after scandal started stacking up on top of each other. Lewd Reddit posts, sexual text messages with other women while married, and a campaign that apparently knew about some of this months before the public ever heard a word. And what we're going to do today is go through the clips in order, break down each response, and talk plainly about what all of that means, or all of this means for regular people who are just trying to figure it out if the person asking for their vote actually deserves it. So, the first round of questions started after those Reddit posts came out, and reporters went directly to Democratic leaders and asked a simple question. As you guys seen in the first clip, is Graham Platner a liability after those lewd posts were exposed? And you seen what happened, because one leader straight up said, I haven't seen those. Multiple reporters, multiple senators, multiple attempts to get a straight answer. And every single one of them found a way to sidestep it, change the subject, or suddenly discover they hadn't been paying attention to this particular race. These are people who can tell you the details of every Republican scandal, every allegation, every controversy from any state in the country without blinking. But the moment a reporter asks about their own candidate, they suddenly don't know anything about it. That's not forgetfulness, that's a choice. Think about it this way. If your coworker got caught doing something wrong at the job, and your manager walked up and said, I don't really know him that well, you'll know immediately that your manager is just trying to stay out of it, because that's exactly what it looks like when someone is trying not to get their fingerprints on something messy. But while all of that dodging was happening with the leadership, Platner himself went on camera and said something that should have been a 5-alarm warning to anyone paying attention, because a reporter asked him directly, are there other skeletons from your past that might still come out in this race? You seen it in the first clip, and he looked into the camera and said, no, my life is not very complicated and there's nothing else coming. It's why they led with what they had, quote unquote. Now think about the confidence it takes to say that out loud, on record with cameras rolling, when you are a man whose wife had already gone to your own campaign 8 months earlier with information about sexual text messages you were sending to other women. He sat there and told the public there was nothing else coming, and the whole time his campaign already knew. The statement, quote, they led with what they had, sounds like a power move in the moment, like you're calling someone's bluff, but it only works if you're actually holding a clean hand, and he wasn't. And here's what the Wall Street Journal, New York Times actually reported. And I want to break this down as plainly as possible so nothing gets lost in the noise. Platner's wife, Amy Gertner, went to his own campaign last August, meaning months before any of this became public, and told them she had found sexual text messages between her husband and other women earlier in their marriage, and they were married in 2023. So we're talking about something that happened very early. The New York Times said he'd been exchanging those messages with as many as a dozen women, and the campaign pushed back and said no, it was up to 6. And I want you to sit with that for a moment, because both of those are the campaign's own words. And neither number is good. The argument isn't about whether the Times got it exactly right. The argument is that the campaign's own best case correction was still up to 6 women, quote unquote. And they thought that was the number worth correcting to, which tells you everything about how they were calculating this. The campaign confirmed the behavior to CBS. The Reddit posts were embarrassing, no question, but they were just the opening act. And the decision to stay quiet about what they already knew is where this story gets serious, right? So, Kelsey, right? The prediction market shows you exactly what happened the moment this information went public on May 21st. Platner's odds of winning the Maine Senate race sat at 72%. And after this story broke, they dropped at 58.5%. That's not a small move. And people who had real money on the line started pulling back instantly, because when you have this much chaos surrounding a candidate this early in a race, the risk calculation changes whether you like it or not. Beyond the numbers, there was also the detail about a profile on a social media platform where Platner had posted, as you guys see on the screen here, shirtless mirror selfies. And if you look at the photos, he's covering a tattoo on his arm that repeatedly resembles a Nazi death squad symbol. And the reason that detail sticks is because he reportedly had that tattoo covered up right before he decided to run for Senate, which raises a pretty straightforward question about what he knew and when he decided it was a problem. So after all of that lands publicly, the Democratic defenders finally had to face the cameras, and the responses are something else, right? I want you guys to check this out.
What do you think about Graham Platner's posts? They're controversial ones. The lewd posts he's made. Are you surprised more Democrats aren't
So I
for
have
him to step out?
not been focusing on this race. I am going to do my due diligence and look through the full body of evidence around him. Yes, and I know he has a case to make to the voters, not to people like me. And I know he'll be called to make that case, and he needs to make it because obviously this election is highly consequential.
Let me ask you, do you have concerns with the weight of all these controversies that it may jeopardize Democratic hopes to get that Senate seat in Maine?
Yeah, I have concerns. That guy has questions to answer, and that's what campaigns are for.
I want to ask you about the Senate race in Maine. And the Wall Street Journal and New York Times reporting that last August, Democrat Graham Platner's wife told his campaign about sexual text messages she had found between her husband and other women early in their marriage, and they were married in 2023. The Times says Platner exchanged messages with as many as a dozen women, and his campaign said, no, it was up to 6. In a statement, Platner's wife said she feels betrayed by the ex-campaign aide who revealed the information, and that the couple went to counseling. Do you have concerns about Graham Platner?
Well, first I'll say is, I've been very much focused on the crisis in my home state, so I haven't been able to focus as much on this. But right now, this information's out there with any campaign in the country. The character and the transparency about the different candidates is going to come out. That's part of a campaign. And the voters will decide what it is that they ultimately think in terms of their ability to trust those candidates.
What do you think?
Well, look, right now, for me, I have not met him. I've never talked to him yet.
The campaign for Graham Platner confirmed to CBS on Saturday that the Maine Senate candidate had sent sexually explicit texts to women other than his wife. This is in addition to other past controversies. Does he pass the character test?
Yeah, I mean, I have not followed this story as closely as others have, but I mean, Graham Platner is somebody that served our country. He served his community. He's also made mistakes, and he has admitted that. Character also involves standing up to people who are bankrupting and corrupting this country. And this race is going to be a contrast between somebody that has put his life on the line for this country against somebody that is literally empowering the moral hollowing out of our nation from the White House. So he certainly admitted that he has made mistakes, but I think this is going to be a pretty clear contrast in Maine.
As a Democrat, what do you think this is going to mean going forward up in Maine?
My genuine belief here is that voters in Maine right now are concerned about the fact that they can't afford health care, they can't afford housing. We have the most corrupt White House in American history. Susan Collins has enabled Donald Trump at every turn, not just in this administration, but from the very first administration by voting to confirm people like Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, voting to cut Medicaid for millions of Americans, enabling his authoritarianism. I think that is what voters right now, not just in Maine, but across the country care about. And I think that's what's going to matter in November.
Look, I think it's outrageous. Where's the outrage? Democrats went bananas on Brett Kavanaugh on an unsubstantiated allegation
for sexual assault.
We're going to see. We're going to see what shoes have to drop here yet. This guy had a Nazi tattoo. Nazi
death squad tattoo.
Nazi death squad tattoo. Tattooed. He's derided his fellow servicemen, saying, "I wish you would have died. You deserve to die." I mean, the guy isn't. He's a terrible human being, and for your party to stand by him. This is reminiscent of Joe Biden just this past week saying, you know what? I know Joe is kind of out there, but we just want to beat Trump. Anything to do to beat Trump. You guys are willing to do anything, except anything. I mean, there's got to be a limit.
Val, I want to ask you about another controversial candidate for Democrats. You talked about Maine, Graham Platner. I'm going to just read from my notes because I want to get it right. He's faced a series of controversies, including past posts about sexual assault, a tattoo that resembled a Nazi symbol that he had covered up right before he ran, by the way, and now sexually explicit texts with other women despite being married. Does Graham Platner pose a headache for Democrats?
Well, let me go back to Texas for just a moment. Cornyn was a beloved candidate, beloved by Republicans in Washington and in Texas. I'm not sure that candidate flaws matter as much as they used to. Millions of dollars were spent to save Cornyn. Didn't work. Paxton won by a landslide. But the bottom line is Platner, he's a combat veteran, has served in multiple tours of duty, an oyster farmer, and I believe that sends a message to voters that he understands the working class, had to go to work every day. I think people are so worried about the future right now, they're going to look at, do I feel like this candidate is going to fight for me and what I care about? If Maine believes that through all of the controversy, as we just saw with Paxton, Platner will win.
This is where people, I think, normal people watching this at home are so frustrated with the level of toxic partisanship, where you've got somebody who's, has to defend. You've got Democrats who are defending Graham Platner, who are calling him a good and decent man, and arguing that the guy with the Nazi tattoo, we really need him because he has to defeat Susan Collins, one of the most bipartisan members of Congress in the past couple decades, who voted to convict Donald Trump. But it's so important. We have to have Graham Platner. We have to have somebody who savaged military veterans, said that a military veteran who was being shot at deserved to die, who's blamed rape victims for their own assaults. And you've now got a Democratic Party rallying around somebody like that.
So you guys heard it from Democratic defenders finally having to face the cameras, and the responses are something else, man. One said she hadn't been following this race, you heard, and needed her needed to do her due diligence. A Senate race her own party had been pouring resources into with a candidate they were counting on to flip a seat, and she hasn't been following it closely. Another went straight to the pivot: healthcare, housing, the White House, Susan Collins enabling Donald Trump at every turn. Basically anything to move the conversation, as you guys seen in this clip, away from the man at the center of it. And then one of them landed on what might be the most telling answer of all, which was essentially he's a combat veteran. He served his country. He admitted he made mistakes. And this race is going to be a contrast between someone who put his life on the line and someone empowering the moral hollowing of the nation. Now, listen, military service is real and it deserves genuine respect. No debate there. But service to your country is not a blanket that covers every question about your character and judgment forever. And the standard for the United States Senate isn't, did you serve? It's, are you the right person for this job right now with everything voters know about you? Using someone's military record as a shield against accountability questions isn't honoring their service, it's using their service, and voters can feel the difference. One panelist made the Kavanaugh comparison directly on air, and it's worth laying out plainly. Democrats went to war over Brett Kavanaugh based on an unconfirmed allegation, treated it as a completely disqualifying thing, and now their own candidate has a campaign that confirmed the behavior. A wife who confirmed she brought it to the campaign months ago, and the party response has been silence, deflection, and a pivot straight to talking points. Another defender on the panel made the point that Platner had also posted things on Reddit about sexual assault and had verbally attacked fellow servicemen in ways that went well beyond any normal disagreement. And yet the party was still calculating whether to stay behind him because the far left base of the party had made clear they were supporting Platner regardless. As you guys can see on the screen from Kyle Kalinske, who is a popular Democrat, pro-Democrat political commentator. He supports the Democratic Party to the fullest extent. And with that statement on his X post, I think that is what I mean by the far left base. Make of it as you will. Think for yourself. I'm just showing you guys so we can have a productive conversation here. So, when you look at that, and the far left base of the party had made clear they were supporting Platner regardless, and establishment Democrats were too afraid of that wing to come out and draw a clean line. There you have it. So now we have the Amy Gertner, which is Graham Platner's wife, put out a video statement from outside, walking up and down the road, swatting bugs, and she was clearly going through something real and painful. And nothing about this is funny when you look at it as a human being. She talked about loving Graham, about their life together and Sullivan, their two dogs, all of it. And she pushed back on the reporting by saying she felt it was gossip. And the media should be talking about real issues like healthcare and education and childcare instead. Check it out.
Hey everyone, it's Amy. I wanted to make a statement today and, oh sorry, I'm getting eaten by bugs. I wanted to make a statement today in response to a couple of news articles that are out there about my marriage to Graham. If anybody knows me and Graham personally, you know that we got married in 2023. We live in Sullivan. We've got 2 dogs and we love each other deeply. So it makes me really angry, disappointed, and I find it really shameful that there's a group of media outlets and people who are willing to spread gossip instead of talking about real issues that Graham is running on, like healthcare and education and childcare. I'm walking up and down my road right now, and this is like my 20th take. This is very hard to do, but I just really wanted to make sure that everyone knows that Graham and I have a great marriage. Being married is hard. Being newly married is hard. Being newly married and going through infertility is hard. Being newly married, going through infertility And a Senate campaign is hard. I don't even know if I have the right words to describe what we've been going through, but our marriage counselor helps. My personal counselor helps. Graham's personal counselor helps. And we work on our mental health every day. No marriage is perfect, and I don't want a perfect marriage. I want my marriage, and I want to be married to Graham. Sorry, black flies. I knew the man that I married is wonderful and dynamic and probably a genius. I knew the man that I married had been through an immense amount of violent, active combat. And he's been in therapy for years. I admire the fuck out of him. So when there are news articles about our marriage, it's just extra shitty. Can I say that online? I hope I can. It's extra shitty because people in Maine want affordable gas. They want to be able to see their doctor when they're sick. They want to be able to send their kids to a nice school, a nice daycare facility, and raise families the way that they want to. So I think I'm feeling angry today. And I don't normally make public statements, but it's really important for me to tell all of you out there, especially people who are voting in Maine, that I think it's shameful behavior to spend time and energy and resources on negative ads and negative stories on Graham when all he's trying to do is improve the lives of people who work for a living. And that's it. He doesn't have any other agenda, which is what I think people are trying to dig up. And this is a long video, so I hope my editing team isn't too frustrated with me. I hope that everyone's having a good Saturday. Graham and I really care about the state of Maine. We really love it. We were born and raised here, and I think we deserve better. I think Mainers deserve better. And I don't know what else to say. So if you're editing this video, I'm really sorry. Thanks for watching.
And there you have it, family. So, she talked about loving Graham, their life together, things like that. And she talked about how hard their marriage has been. Newly married, going through infertility, running a Senate campaign all at the same time. And she says she admires Graham and considers him wonderful and probably a genius, as you guys heard. And that she knew the man she married had been through a significant amount of violent active combat, has been in therapy for years. And then in the middle of all that, she mentioned that they're in a marriage counseling, that she has her own personal counselor. And Graham has his own personal counselor on top of that. 3 separate outside professionals actively working to help hold this situation together. Now, and I'm not going to mock anyone for going to counseling, because working on yourself in your marriage takes real courage, and that part deserves respect. But the question voters have every right to ask is this. If it takes that level of external support to manage what's happening inside your personal life right now, and you are simultaneously asking the people of Maine to send you to the United States Senate, is that a fair thing to ask of them? The Senate is one of the most demanding jobs in the country, and the decisions made there affect healthcare, education, the economy, and the daily lives of millions of people. So voters aren't wrong to factor in readiness and stability when they're making that call. One more thing worth noting on Amy's statement. She says she felt betrayed by the campaign aide who revealed the information publicly, but the reporting indicated that she was the one who originally brought it to the campaign herself, which means she told them. The campaign sat on it, and then when it leaked, she directed the frustration at the leaker rather than the situation that created it. So pull back from the individual scandal for a second and look at the political picture, because this is where the contradiction gets impossible to ignore. Democrats have talked for years about how much they respect moderate Republicans who don't toe the party line, the bipartisan types, the ones willing to break with their own party when it matters. And Susan Collins is literally that person. You heard that she voted to convict Donald Trump. So I want to play this last clip before I go on with the conversation and then close. So I want you guys to check this out.
Now, it is not gossip if she brought it to the campaign herself and told them what it is. I will say this. Graham Platner was supposed to come on the show. His team pulled out. They came to us and wanted to come on. They pulled out. I think we saw why yesterday as these stories came out. But one of the questions I have is, for him, is like, do people know who you are? Does Maine really know what they're getting with you? Because there's always things that come out over and over again. It's like, where is the...
There you have it, right? So with Susan Collins, like I was saying, she voted to convict Trump. She has one of the most independent voting records in the Senate over the past 2 decades. Democrats have praised exactly that type of Republican in every interview and every panel discussion for as long as anyone can remember. And now they're being asked point blank, given everything that's coming out about Platner, do you still want to replace Collins with him? And the answer from most of them isn't a clear yes or no. It's the voters will decide, quote unquote. And campaigns are for answering questions, quote unquote. And a whole lot of language designed to actually not say anything. That's not principle. That's a party doing math on whether a scandal is survivable. And that math is exactly what drives the frustration people feel about politics across the board. The sense that accountability only applies when it's convenient and the rules shift, depending on which team someone plays for. The deeper problem is that Platner's odds are dropping. The scandals keep stacking up, and the Democratic establishment is still too cautious to draw a clean line because the far left base of the party is fully behind them and the leadership doesn't want that fight. The result is a party that claims it loves character and bipartisanship, but keeps doing the math on whether it can get away with ignoring both. And voters in Maine are the ones who have to decide what that's worth to them come November. Accountability doesn't disappear because your party needs a win. That's the thread running through every piece of this story, from the I haven't seen those, quote unquote, non-answers in the hallway, to the campaign sitting on information for months while their candidate promised the public there was nothing left to find, to the defenders pivoting to talking points the moment the questions get too direct. So I actually want to say a scripture in the Bible for those who are Christian and want to be spiritually enriched. And then I'll also lead with life wisdom for those who are not Christian. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 9 puts it plainly. And I quote, "Whoever walks in integrity walks secretly, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out." That's not just a political statement. It's a life principle that applies to every one of us, no matter what position we hold or what party we support. Because how you live when you think no one is watching always has a way of becoming a story. So I want to hear from you directly. Do you still think character matters when you step into that voting booth? Or has it become irrelevant at this point? Drop your honest answer in the comments and make sure you check out the next video, because the conversation is far from over. As always, family, spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate. I hope you guys enjoy breakdowns like this and future videos of breakdowns like this. And I hope I pour some type of value into your life as always. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. As always, we're just having a conversation. Peace.